I've talked to a lot of folks who come in under me asking advice for how to get started and want me to be a part of their early journey. Probably one and two things that I hear the most is the analysis paralysis, number one, and then I don't have enough time, number two. Those two things are definitely addressable. You have to focus on them because if you allow that to creep in, then it's easy to procrastinate and roll the ball down the road saying this isn't the right time.
Welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast, the show where we teach you how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want.
Doctor!
Now, here's your host, Dr. Alex Schloe.
Guys, we have another repeat guest on the podcast today. My friend, Dr. Franky Davis, is back on the podcast. He actually has one of the most listened to episodes from this last year of Physicians and Properties. If you have not yet listened to his first episode, you're going to want to take a listen because we talk about his journey and how he bought 57 doors while he was an orthopedic surgery resident. Absolutely incredible. Franky, his personal brand, his real estate growth, his real estate portfolio has just grown so much in between our last podcast and this one. I had to bring him back. He's been a great friend. We've been able to connect every couple of weeks here since that first podcast and have had some awesome opportunities together and some awesome opportunities in the future from a real estate perspective and then just a friendship and life perspective going forward. It has been awesome. This episode was fantastic. You're going to want to stay and listen till the end because this is just packed with value. It was a great podcast. So without any further ado, Franky Davis, welcome back to the Physicians and Properties Podcast. Hey man, so glad to have you back on the podcast. You actually have one of the most listened to episodes on the show. Real glad to have you back. It's been so fun to get to know you over the last year and see all the growth, man. Yeah, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. I've been looking forward to it ever since we got off the last episode. I had a great time and same thing. We have pretty similar journeys thus far. It's been a lot of fun getting to know you. It's been fun for sure. And if folks are listening to this, Franky did an episode. Gosh, it probably was close to a year ago at this point. Fantastic episode. He talked a lot about his journey, how he purchased 57 units in Residency, which is insane, 57 doors in Residency, and how he did that. So definitely go back, listen to that episode. This one's going to be a little less structured and just a bit about like our journey in the last year and how fun that's been and some challenges as well. And yeah, super excited to dive in. Franky, if folks don't know you, do you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself? Yeah, absolutely. So Franky Davis, I'm an orthopedic surgeon in the southeastern U.S. in Georgia. As Alex said, just briefly, we began our real estate career when I was a resident. Felt pretty stressed and anxious about our financial scenario. Being 32 when I finished and pushing $200,000 in debt with two kids and no retirement savings. That's sort of what lit the fire under me to learn how to invest in real estate. Flash forward at the end of Residency, as you said, we had 57 doors and have since been able to sell quite a bit of that portfolio and 1031 exchange it up into a pretty sizable portfolio for us that has kind of changed the way I feel about our financial situation and has taken quite a bit of my clinical pressure off and my burnout factor off here 3 years into practice. It's been a fun ride, but a lot has been learned and a lot of struggles along the way, like you said. We're now settled and my kids are doing well here. We've been here now for 3 years and my wife's in town, so couldn't be more blessed. And now I'm just trying to enjoy it. That's awesome, man. It's been a blessing, that's for sure. This year's been crazy for both of us. I'm excited to dive into that. Yeah. How do you feel like real estate has taken that pressure off or that kind of burnout factor, as you mentioned? How's it done that for you? I think a lot of physicians now, this isn't something people who listen to the podcast haven't felt or heard, but because of the reimbursement changes and because of the debt that's accrued during training and just the cost of living that has really escalated in the last 5 years, people are feeling like it's harder and harder to really realize the benefit of working so hard to get into a higher income earning profession. I felt that in Residency and felt that I was going to be pressured to meet the metrics and to do more surgery, see more patients and not really be able to connect with them and practice medicine like I wanted to. Knowing that I have this cash flow and this network accrual that has really kind of grown at a rate I didn't expect has taken that pressure off and allowed me to really settle into orthopedics and enjoy my craft a little more than maybe I would have if I was really chasing my tail trying to meet those metrics. Franky, if you don't mind sharing, what's the portfolio look like today? Man, so it's a mix of different asset classes. We have self-storage, we have some small multifamily, and we have several different types of commercial properties, in addition to a couple of things, which I'll talk about in just a second, that are kind of my lifestyle benefit that I was also able to invest in and kind of make it a a net worth accrual part of the process as well. Our portfolio growth is around just bumped above $6 million, which is insane. We started and have kind of basically doubled probably twice. That just shows that this is not by any means because I was able to be an orthopedic surgeon and earn money, then save money, and then use that money to then buy properties. This has been an ability to force appreciation in different scenarios where I was able to add value and then either reposition myself with the financing on those assets to allow me to pull capital out, or I was able to sell them and tax deferred exchange into larger assets. The growth has been surprising. I had read about it theoretically, but having actually implemented that over 3 years has been really exciting and kind of made me just more hungry to keep pushing. I'm interested to see what's going to happen next for sure. That's awesome, man. A ton of growth. I think the other key piece is you took action early, man. I mean, in residency, and you just got after it. I mean, not many people have 57 doors in residency. Not many people are even thinking about retirement or financial freedom or real estate or anything in residency, which I hope folks listening to the show and hearing your story on this episode and last episode, I hope they see that this is possible in residency. And it didn't make you a worse orthopedic surgeon. Like, you still put all that effort into residency. You just found the time to get it done. You did it. And you do have time during residency. You just got to figure out how to make things work. I remember you saying you were walking in the halls of the hospital, listening to Bigger Pockets and like taking notes and all kinds of stuff. Yep. And you just have to find that time, and you got to be hungry for it. That's why you are where you are right now. And dude, I'm excited to see in the next 3 years, that portfolio is going to be like 50 million. Easy. Man, I've talked to a lot of folks who come in under me asking advice for how to get started and want me to be a part of their early journey. Probably one and two things that I hear the most is the analysis paralysis, number one, and then I don't have enough time, number two. Those two things are definitely addressable. You have to focus on them, because if you allow that to creep in, then it's easy to procrastinate and roll the ball down the road saying this isn't the right time. But at some point, you got to get your irons in the fire and let them grow. And a lot of this is a get rich slow. You know, the story that we just said for me has had some rapid growth, but it's been implementing a consistent plan, weekly, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. As long as you get started, then that momentum gains. And then once the momentum gains, it really starts happening quicker than you would expect. Yeah, that snowball really picks up fast. It's been surprising. It's been cool too. I think I personally have, I don't know if I've set too little goals or if I've just been putting in that consistent effort and I've gotten rewarded for it, but it's been crazy to see this last year, the growth that you've had, the growth that we've been fortunate to have. It's been awesome. Yeah, man. I feel the same way. Yeah. I got two young kids too that go to the cesspool and come home and give it to me. I apologize to anyone if I'm coughing on here, fighting something. Still haven't had COVID all this time later, but I got something. All the sick kids going back to school and giving it to me. I mean, that's awesome. You hit on a little bit about taking action. What do you tell folks for analysis paralysis, the folks that are really hung up on from an analysis paralysis perspective? What do you tell docs or residents or other folks you talk to how to get over that analysis paralysis? The way I've tried to describe it is definitely make sure you're giving yourself an appropriate amount of time to become educated so that that confidence factor can grow. But in the very beginning of your educational journey, begin telling yourself that you're going to reach a point at which you're going to have to take the dive. Just go ahead and start getting yourself mentally prepared. There will be a time where I have enough knowledge and I have to take action. And it's still going to be scary, even if you had that amount of knowledge. You might as well get your mind right, but be ready to take the jump when you're not 1,000% sure. That's something that physicians and other professionals too, but specifically physicians have a hard time with. We do not like delving into something that we don't know the answer, which is why we have all these diagnostic means at which we can find out what's going on with people. We try to do the same thing in the setting of real estate, and you can't know every little thing. As you're learning, you need to figure out how to risk manage and how to have calculated risk and navigable risk so that when you do decide to step out into the space, it's not as anxiety provoking. That's hard to do, but I think once you kind of get that self-talk going, and then for me, it was when I was underwriting deals and I got to the point where I was just had an intangible sort of feeling about how the deal would perform because I'd underwritten so many deals that gave me a little bit of confidence. Once I got to that point, it was a time where Anna and I looked at each other and we were like, this time we got to take the dive. That's awesome. Yeah, I see that all the time, both those analysis paralysis and then just the inaction. I think about it too, from a physician perspective, we're fortunate that we do make a pretty good income. And so like worst case scenario, we got to pick up a couple extra shifts to pay off a property that's probably not going down in value. Our biggest fears are really so small. I remember the first house I bought, I paid $58 out of pocket. I was terrified. It doubled in value and cash was $1,000 plus a month. And now I have different fears that are probably too small, but it's just something to work through and keep growing along the way. Yeah, I think the other thing too, that when I have mentees and students coming through that I try to tell them is the first deal, you probably are trying to hit a single to right field, choke down and hit a single. You're not trying to hit a grand slam on your first deal because the downside loss is more catastrophic for you than the upside gain. Because if you have a bad first deal, then it's probably your last deal, which in my opinion, the first deal really doesn't matter. All it is getting you involved. So if you can navigate a first deal where you make a little bit or even if you come out even, then it doesn't leave a bad taste in your mouth. So you continue to learn and sort of mold your game plan moving forward. That would be kind of a more focal answer
answer to that is try to target yourself on something that wouldn't overextend you and you're pretty sure it's going to be successful in some capacity so that you can build your confidence.
For sure. And you're never going to hit that single to right field if you don't swing the bat. Well, I want to hit on personal brand. You've just really popped off on Instagram lately, been crushing it. And of course, we can talk about raising capital and how that's impacted that as well. All the cool stuff you've done in the last year. But what made you start the personal brand and how do you feel like that's impacted your real estate investing?
I think this is sort of a little bit of a tough topic for me personally because fairly anti-social media personally. I don't use a lot of social media. I'm not a big consumer of social media. The decision to get more involved in social media was because my local experience when I put a network together was so enjoyable and had such lasting benefit. We didn't have a real estate investment association meetup in the town I moved to. One of the first things I did when we moved here is I set up and established a RIA group, and that RIA group has met multiple times. And really, I enjoyed that camaraderie. I enjoyed seeing people who were further along in the journey than me and further behind me in the journey. I really enjoyed networking with all those people. In addition to that, I had tangible benefit that was happening because of that network. I was making deals. I was establishing banking relationships. I was meeting contractors and vendors and all kind of stuff. It was really showing me that, okay, the part of this process that maybe I haven't really given enough attention to is how much other people are interested and how much other people can help me and I can help them, because I was kind of the Lone Ranger trying to pave my own way. That was probably number one. And then number two was the decision that this sort of thing that we were able to do in residency by becoming educated may have targeted a little niche for physicians who have a hard time doing that, have a hard time kind of prioritizing their time and becoming educated in an efficient manner. And that may be something that the market could utilize. So I decided to put together that little video course that we've been marketing and my mentorship program that we market as well. So that's kind of how everything snowballed. In the last 4 or 5 months, it's just sort of taken on a life of its own, and I'm kind of interested to see where it goes. But that segued me into a little bit of fundraising and meeting people that are doing deals on larger scales that I never thought possible for me. If you're hesitant about it, if you have anxiety about it, then you're right here in the seat next to me, because I'm the same way. It doesn't come natural and I don't feel super comfortable all the time, but the benefits have definitely outweighed the downside. And I think for my real estate career and my online presence career, it's necessary, but also has already shown some pretty significant benefit.
Yeah, I agree, Franky. I felt the same way. I'm so anxious to start Physicians and Properties and the podcast and could not have been more blessed with it. I think back to it, I'm like, man, what took me so, I had analysis paralysis for just getting this started. I can't imagine where I'd be right now if I started this when I first had the idea. And folks that are listening, man, like, personal brand is so important, community is so important. And I tell folks all the time, the podcast has been by far the best networking opportunity I've ever had. You get into the room with people who are way further along than you, who are willing to help pull you up to their level. You get exposure to all these deal opportunities and potential investors. It's just been awesome. The most important thing, the people's lives that have been changed. Like one of my buddies, his episode for the podcast will come out in a couple weeks. His name is Tyler. Shout out to Tyler. We went to med school together. He's like, hey man, I've been following your journey since way before Physicians and Properties when you first bought your first Airbnb. He was under contract on an apartment building from Baghdad while he was deployed. If it was just Tyler who got some benefit from this podcast, that'd be enough, man.
That's my favorite part. The mentorship arrangements and seeing people, overcome the fear factor and start to take control of their financial future and not be so tied to working for the man in a scenario where they feel overworked and underpaid and underappreciated. I just think is something that I have found pride in when I didn't really expect it. I kind of got into it maybe for different reasons, and that sort of motivation has morphed and grown over time. And that's been one of the most rewarding things.
How cool is it for you to have that flexibility to be like, yeah, I don't really need to do these extra surgeries or be on call these extra couple nights. It's not going to change things. It's just awesome, man.
It is nice for sure. I think one of the things for personal brand, because I was like you, I mean, who knows how long I've thought about doing this process. I think I worked on the course, the actual video content for over a year before I ever announced to anyone that I was actually going to do it. And I was really hesitant to do it. I almost deleted the whole thing just because of that anxiety factor.
I remember you said it to me pretty early on and I was like, dude, this is awesome.
Just that sort of, I don't know, that second guessing anxiety. I can't remember. I read a quote. It was talking about, I'm going to misquote it and I can't even remember who the source was. So that takes away some credibility, but something along the lines of, you think your presence in other people's day is more prominent than it actually is. For me, I was like, you know what? I'm so worried about all these people that are going to think about me trying to project myself and market myself and sleazily presenting myself online. I've had no experiences like that. Now in 8-10 months of trying to put myself out there in some capacity, it's been nothing but positive feedback. Not nothing. I mean, you got some keyboard warriors that sometimes say some funny stuff. We were laughing about it earlier, but I definitely think the majority of it has been positive, and the majority of it has been encouraging for both me and other people who see that I'm trying to do that and are willing to kind of jump in there in the boat with me to row in the same direction to try to achieve the same goal.
For sure. I think, well, one, you definitely don't market sleazily. You come come across and you have a lot of experience to back you up, which is good. I was thinking of the quote too. It's something along the lines of like, we're so concerned with what we perceive. Other people are thinking about us, but they're too busy thinking about themselves. And that's been freeing for me too, to just be like, you know what? I don't really care what other people think.
They don't care about us either.
Right. But we'll be the ones that don't have to work those extra shifts or see those extra shifts if we don't want to. And we can practice medicine how we want to. So it's worth it for sure, man.
And the people that you are putting this together for will receive it well and will benefit from it. And that's the thing. It's like we're targeting people who are not coming to your platform to be a troll or a keyboard warrior to try to cut you down and bring your momentum down. Those people are of no benefit to you or me. And I think trying my best to kind of keep my blinders on and understand that although this is a side project and it's a little bit of a hobby too, and it's something that I enjoy reading about and thinking about, it is something that has brought benefit to people and brings benefit to me from those networks created.
Absolutely. Other than maybe some imposter syndrome getting started, what's been some struggles you've had with building out the course and the mentoring?
I think it's just realizing the benefit. The thing for me that, and you talk about this all the time, and we both feel the same way, is my most valuable resource is my time. And this, anybody who tells you that you're going to jump online and get rich quick is lying to your face, especially if they're trying to sell you a course, ironically enough for me to say, because it's not possible. I've been doing this now pretty consistently for about 6-8 months, and I've generated some momentum and I get a lot of positive response, but I still swing and miss all the time. I'm still trying to sort of triage myself down and figure out what's working, what's not working. I have a marketing manager now who's fantastic, but he and I are trial and erroring, trying to figure out how to get our lead funnels going, how to nurture the leads, customer relations management software, organization, the list goes on and on. So there's just a lot of stuff that in medicine particularly, we don't learn. I'm kind of learning that stuff on the fly. That sort of ground and pound learning process cannot be the most enjoyable, particularly if I've worked 60 hours that week in orthopedics. It's like hard to have enough fuel in the tank to continue to pursue it. But I would say that's the biggest hiccup for sure as we move forward.
Agreed. There's definitely not enough time in the day. We're both dreamers. Luckily, we take action too, but it's just not enough time to build everything we want to build. My partner, Charlie, has brought this up for our mastermind, the Row Room, and for our assisted living investments. We're at the point now where we're going to have to hire because we're growing so fast and we just can't do it all. We got to take the things off our plate that we hate doing so we can work on the business and not in it. That's the next mindset shift.
Funny you mentioned that, man. I've never read that somebody regretted that action. Even if it's like, I'm just trying to figure out, because for me, we pay a property manager and our portfolio is large enough now where I pay a whatever 7% property management fee, and like 7% of my portfolio gross revenue every month couldn't pay somebody's full-time salary. But that, in addition to the marketing stuff I pay and in addition to some of the virtual assistant stuff I pay, I mean, we're getting close. And I feel like I could really utilize a full-time personal assistant or sort of business manager in a capacity that would allow me to grow quite a bit faster. But that's a hard pill to swallow kind of off the front end. I don't know for sure I would see that back end return in some sort of legitimate way. And you're sitting there talking about writing minimum $60,000 check on the first year, maybe more, to draw an unqualified candidate. It's a little bit anxiety provoking.
It really is. It'll be fun to kind of go through that journey at the same time and see how things go. I agree. I've never heard anyone who's regretted it. They've grown exponentially faster building out that team and getting the right people on the bus, but it's scary. We're getting to the point where we are fortunate to start having some really good cash flow and making some good money. And I'm like, do we want to take our cash flow that we worked so hard for and then put that towards a salaries? We're kind of trying to tease things out. See maybe if we do it more kind of commission based, like bring someone in to help do some of our marketing and give them a commission off each member that joins the mastermind, stuff like that to kind of make that pill easier to swallow.
I've considered that too, like different deal closers and get commission based. You're benefiting from every transactional process, which I think is a great sort of intermediate way to build your team out. I don't necessarily know that 100% offloads the time commitment that we have, but just kind of is another arm that you're able to extend. But for me, it's a lot of like infrastructure too. I still want to be pursuing motivated seller leads myself personally and my own deal flow. And that requires some sort of oversight for me. I'm hopeful that at some point I'll be able to kind of groom someone that wants to step into that role. But I imagine that if I'm willing to offload a lot of the responsibility for them to them, that they'll probably be more than able to do it on their own. So I'm also a little bit conflicted about that. I don't know where that sort of perfect line lies.
It'll be fun. And I think the hard part too is kind of giving up control of something that you've built for this long to then like, okay, I trust you to handle these key things. We have a VA, or I have a VA. She's amazing. But for our other businesses, we're at that point. We really got it.
Just knowing you as little as I do now, your personality, you're going to do better at that than I am. Like,
well, sweetie. Yeah, man. Well, you're talking about deal flow. What are some deals you've been working on lately since the last episode?
The last 3 properties we've purchased were purchased this year in our home market. The remainder of my portfolio, separate a self-storage facility, which we have here, were purchased in a neighboring market about an hour away. But this year we were able to use some pretty interesting tax benefits associated with our opportunity zone in our downtown square. I bought 3 commercial spaces. One we totally renovated and put an awesome pizza restaurant operator in it. And he has wings and pizza and beer and cocktails. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed not only generating decent equity for me and cash flow and long-term wealth accrual on a building, but it was really fun to see the community buy into said building. We've really started trying to kind of pivot into doing some larger scale reno or even some ground up development in my home market because we're at a big housing deficit here and have some larger economic drivers have come to town in the last 5 to 7 years. So that's probably plan number next for me, in addition to doing a little bit more fundraising and that kind of thing.
Nice. That's awesome. Anytime you post about the pizza shop, I'm like, oh man, that's so cool to be like, I own that. Do you get free pizza?
No, I still pay him. I love it. His name is Jason Atterbury. I hope he listens to this. Great guy. He's a young man who's pulled himself up by his bootstraps and hustled. And he had another location, and this is his second location. He and his wife are doing great over there. I love going and eating. The pizza's great. That's been a cool thing to see, is to watch an operator friend who kind of has grown with you in that capacity. And I've enjoyed it a lot. We're actually about to probably in the next 6 months or so build out a back patio deck with a little stage and some nice outdoor music opportunity and football and the whole deal. So our little community, our little downtown needs something like that. So it'll be fun to add it.
Well, it's cool too to impact and change your community and change your downtown and provide those awesome places for community to grow and flourish. I think a lot of places are missing that, and a lot of people are missing that community aspect, even more so after the pandemic and whatnot. That's awesome, man. What a cool way to use real estate to change your hometown.
That's a lot of fun. I didn't grow up small town. I grew up medium town in middle Georgia, but I had a little angst moving back to my wife's hometown in the beginning, and it's been great. The community's great. Everybody knows each other. Everybody's dirt's out there, which is cool. You're held accountable, and I'm seeing my patients in Publix and the school pickup line and all kind of stuff. But that small town feel and small town life is fun, and it's been really neat starting to kind of divert my real estate play into that. In addition to that, I have a lot of interest in some other asset classes. I really am interested peripherally in the mobile home park space. Now, whether that's in an active capacity or whether that be utilizing an operator with my next round of fundraising, I haven't really decided, but I'll probably get in the self-storage space a little bit more strongly positioned because I think smaller rural self-storage facilities with expansion potential and the opportunity to put them on remote management with remote gates and remote locks and a cloud-based management software really is a more efficient opportunity than many people realize. That's what we've done. We bought a 48-unit facility, expanded it to 91, fenced it in, remote gate, remote locks, and it's just been a really nice way to sort of package that up. I could see how you could package maybe 10 91-unit facilities together and sell them up to private equity or something. I don't know, man. My wheels are turning. We'll see what happens.
I'm getting shiny object syndrome. That sounds awesome. I heard the other day, I was listening to a podcast, and they were talking about self-storage, and there's, I think, 9 feet per United States resident of self-storage in America. That's just how much we have.
And honestly, that does give me a little bit of pause with storage. I think it's saturated. In our little town, it's pretty saturated, so the competition is more prevalent than you would think. But I still think those opportunities in those smaller rural areas are there because they're still mom and pop owned usually, and there's not a lot of out-of-town money coming or private equity money driving the prices up and the cap rates down. So you could get into a self-storage facility with expansion potential at like an 8.5 cap, and that leaves quite a bit of chicken on the bone for a pretty stable, low-risk asset class. That's kind of my thoughts on it. I don't guarantee, but if you were trying to sort of risk manage stepping into a very competitive asset class, that would be how I would do it.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it. What about mobile home parks do you like?
The thing I like about mobile home parks, and I have never invested in the space, it's more of a theoretical benefit, is that the cost of living has gone through the roof and the cost of buying, owning, and maintaining a home has gone through the roof. The opportunity to provide economic sources of living for people, that's where the slippery slope is for me. I would never want to get into the space if I couldn't provide really quality housing for people in that price range. And then I would also want to sell the homes to the tenants and then collect lot rent so that they have pride of ownership and are able to have a little bit of equity. That's kind of what is interesting to me. The management in that scenario would be fairly low if you're able to sell to people who are qualified because they would maintain and keep up with and take care of their home on your lot, and then you would collect lot rent at fairly low management bandwidth.
I'm invested in syndication for a mobile home park in Spartanburg, South Carolina. That's exactly what they're doing. Yeah, it's done really well, and it's been really cool to see. And I agree. It's a great space to be in. Don't think it's saturated yet. I think there's some good opportunity there. Yeah, kind of flex space. We were talking about warehouse before we got on the call. I think that's also another great play. I know you're working on that as well, right?
I am for sure. I'm looking into some antique-y kind of retro warehouses and then repurposing them for different things, whether that be multifamily or even mixed use commercial. I don't really know though. I need to do a little bit more research. That may be my little community network that I try to join to find out people who have done those conversions, because my ability to kind of use my imagination to figure out what a space could be used for has been kind of limited. I need to dig into it a little bit more. There's a lot of warehouse space around where I'm living. The ag world has a lot of warehouses that are trying to be repurposed now, and a lot of them get condemned and don't get utilized. For us to kind of gentrify these smaller ag towns would really be nice if you could drive some economic growth by utilizing the buildings, which is what I'm going to try to do in some capacity.
That's awesome. Another way to just change the community too, which is awesome. That's cool, Franky. You had mentioned fundraising and raising capital. How's that journey been for you? What's that been like as you've been raising some capital?
As you know, you and I have kind of dipped our toe in at the same time. It was met with a lot of anxiety in the beginning. I think the reason is because my portfolio growth has been my money, my leverage, my risk, and my rear end, for lack of a better word, if things go bad. I think I have never taken on a partner. Not that I haven't had the opportunity, but I've never taken on the partner because I didn't want to have to answer to anyone. I didn't want to have the potential for some decision that I made to lead to a loss that affected someone else. But part of raising money is pursuing deals that you can't do on your own. If you market yourself in a manner and let your reputation grow in a manner that's honest, that you're going to treat their money as it is yours. And even more, I would want to protect my limited partner investors more than me, because it would give me much more pain and distress if I lost their money. That was probably the biggest hurdle in the beginning. And I think if you make sure that on the front end, you're letting them know that you're getting in the deal on your own, you are putting your own money where your mouth is. That's one credibility point. I just made sure that I wouldn't get paid from the deal until they'd all been paid. I'm not collecting fees on the front end. That may change later as my bandwidth involvement grows. If I'm more of an operational role in the future, I may take some small fees on the front end, but I would like to have full disclosure from the beginning so that people feel like they're getting treated honestly and that I'm prioritizing their returns over my personal gain from the transaction.
What were some things you learned about raising money that you may do differently next time? Or what were some challenges that you faced?
I feel like that's a big list. I still feel kind of like I'm so new to the game that I don't even know what I don't know yet in this space. You're familiar with the deals that we raise money for. There are large development deals in the Northeast, much larger scale from the ground up than I'm used to. So the operators were much more experienced. I was in conference calls with people who have been moving hundreds of millions of dollars around and doing big scale multifamily development. And that's easy to get overwhelmed. I spend a lot of my time kind of keeping my mouth shut, kind of speak when you're spoken to, try to absorb as much as you can, which I think an important part of that is kind of the humility factor. If I didn't know something we talked about, which didn't happen too often, but if I did, I would make notes. And then, man, I was going and reading. I was listening to a new book on Audible every week, trying to make sure I was as well versed as I could possibly be moving forward. At the time, I felt confident. I had my pitch decks together and I had all the numbers in my head ready to speak to people who could potentially be interested. It didn't take long for me to realize that I wasn't able to anticipate all the questions that were asked. And that was all right. I had to learn how to handle that on my feet. I think the big thing for me was just being comfortable saying, you know what, man, I don't have the answer to that and I'll find the answer and you just sit tight and I'll get back to you. Let me talk to either the operators or the principal, or I had my own personal attorneys that I have on retainer that I would call and ask questions to, my own personal accountant that I would call and talk to, and we would set up conference calls with the investors if they felt a little bit of angst about it. Just was doing the best I could to be an open book and try to make sure that they understand that I'm on their team. It's a little bit difficult to do. It's a little bit difficult of a role to play. And we're in the middle of it now. Their money's wired and my money's wired and we're waiting. The anxiety hasn't left. I'll let you know when the deal eventually closes and hopefully we see the returns that are projected. And that'll give me the confidence that I need to be able to kind of do it on a scale a little bit larger.
I think that deal is going to crush me and excited for you. I have a lot of same sentiments about raising money that you do. I feel the same way. I would sell my kidney before my investors did get paid back. I mean, like definitely just such a huge privilege, responsibility, and honor to be able to steward someone's money and provide that opportunity. And you hit on that really well of like, hey, this is an opportunity for someone. Sometimes it's not the right opportunity. That's something that I had heard about, but I didn't really expect to experience. The latest deal that we did, I had a guy who really wanted to invest and he was kind of telling me his whole situation. I'm like, hey man, I don't think this is the right deal for you, which is crazy when you're like thinking about the fact that this guy's willing to give you 6 figures and you're like, sorry man, but I just don't think this is right. And that's what folks need to look out for is you need to realize like it's an opportunity for both and see, hey, do they have skin in the game? Those sorts of things as well is really important. I never thought I'd be in that situation of someone willingly wanted me to give me $50,000 to $100,000 and me saying, hey, sorry, man, this isn't for you.
I was surprised by that. It's funny you mentioned that because the same thing, I have like 3 people that come to mind that were not in financial peril themselves by any means, but definitely hadn't prioritized this type of investment opportunity. And then the opportunity presents itself and all of a sudden people are like, all right, hold on. What's the minimum amount I need again? How much do do I need to scrape together to be able to participate? How much time do I have? Similar conversations. You talk to them more and more, and it's like, you know what? There will be other opportunities. Let's just maybe curve this one, and I'll keep you updated on how the process goes, and you can kind of be with me in spirit. And then the next deal, you're definitely on the list. I've been cultivating my kind of soft commit list, and a lot of the folks who come through my lead funnels for the course or the mentorship program, or just my Instagram and contact with people, are residents and are young attending physicians. To be an accredited investor, you have to have a certain amount of income or net worth, and they hadn't met those criteria yet. So I'm definitely just touching with them and letting them know that that touch point is there, so that in the future, when they do become an accredited investor, that opportunity will arise for us to do business together in the future. It's definitely a lot of this isn't the right time conversations, which is great, which also makes it a little bit easier when somebody comes in and it meets the accredited investor criteria, but also is in a position in their life where they've saved for retirement traditionally, they have a nest egg, and they have this capital that they want to deploy in a little bit higher risk, but a little bit higher yield opportunity. Those are the perfect people to do business with.
Yeah, for sure. Franky, I want to be respectful of your time. If folks want to join the course, reach out to you to know more, invest with you, how can they do that?
Just probably reach out to me via my online platforms. realestateinvestormd.com is my website. I'm happy to answer questions there. Instagram is realestateinvestormd. I'm also happy to touch base with you there and answer any questions you may have. Please reach out. I love talking to people, even if it has nothing to do with anything that I offer. I would love to network with you and give people any advice that I can. I don't have all the answers, but I have a few, and we've navigated it and learned by trial and error. If you have things that you could teach me, then I'm all ears. That's probably the best way.
We'll include the links in the show notes there. Definitely reach out to Franky. He's doing big things to come. Can't wait to have you on the podcast again here soon, man, and hear about how that portfolio is doubled, tripled, quadrupled in the next 6 months to a year, man. So thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
You too. I really appreciate what you're doing with Physicians and Properties. The community's awesome. I've personally asked questions in the group and gotten great answers and networked with people. You're doing great things too. It's fun to have people that are like-minded that you meet over the internet. It's crazy. We hadn't met each other in person, and we talk like once every couple of weeks, and it's hearing about your family growth and about the vacations you're doing. You're going on paternity leave, doing all this stuff. About to shoot an elk. Man, I can't wait to hear about all that. I appreciate the opportunity to be on the podcast again.
Absolutely, man. Can't wait to come down to Georgia, get some of that good pizza.
Heck yeah.
All right, brother. Well, with that, it's been Dr. Franky Davis and Dr. Alex Schloe with another episode of the Physicians and Properties podcast. Signing off. Hey, real quick, if you're still listening to this, I'm assuming you got value from it. So I need your help specifically. My 2-year vision with this podcast is to help 100,000 physicians learn how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want. There are 2 main ways that a podcast grows. One is through ratings and reviews, and the other is word of mouth. If you can please leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as send this to 1 to 2 friends that you think would get value from it, we can reach the physicians that we want to reach. Thanks in advance, and talk to you on the next episode. Please note that the information shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial or medical advice. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the host and the guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense or the United States Air Force.